With last November's opening of what is undoubtedly one of Australia's finest and fastest paceways, Newcastle's trotting industry is enjoying a huge surge in interest. Crowd numbers have swelled as fans flock trackside to watch the first-class action turned on by the champion horses the facility now attracts. But today that resurgence was further nurtured with the inaugural meeting of the Caduceus Club. Named after the 1960 Inter-Dominion winner, the concept began in New Zealand, with clubs also now in Perth, Sydney and Melbourne. But Newcastle is the first non-metropolitan club to start its own Caduceus.
It's just to bring people that's interested in trotting together, bring a friend and just enjoy themselves and promote trotting.
Almost 100 attended today's meeting to take part in the club's first official duty, the barrier draw for this weekend's big $20,000 Foster's Sprint. The event has attracted probably the 8 finest horses racing in Australia at present. Club President Dick McLean believes they won't disappoint.
With the way the barrier draw particularly has worked out, Mike, the speed's going to be on all the way. Rolly Alice set a race record for New South Wales last year in this race of 1:55.8, and I can see that going by the board without any problem on Saturday night.
And the barrier draw for the Foster's Sprint is 1 Westburnt Grant, 2 Aussie Go, 3 Robert Prenner, 4 Overactive, 5 Love to Spare, 6 Mistress Monique, 7 Rolly Alla and 8 Thorate.
Just before 2 o'clock yesterday, police say the pilot radioed another glider that he was losing height and intended to land 25 kilometres north of Parkes, not far from the radio telescope. While there were no eyewitnesses to the crash, it's believed one of the wings clipped the ground on impact, ripping apart the single-seat aircraft. Neil Hawkswell was an aviation addict. The holder of a powered aircraft licence, he had been flying gliders for nearly 10 years. The cross-country flight was his first test flight in a new glider.
Owners could salvage little from the gutted remains of their home this morning. The Rowley family declined to appear on camera, but they told of waking at 11:55 to the sound of a rear bedroom exploding into flames. They had just moments to grab their 2 daughters, aged 2 and 3 years, and run from the blaze. Police said the family couldn't have cut their escape finer.
No, they got out quick smart, and it's a very good job that they did.
Investigators now believe the fire broke out in an electric blanket. It's estimated the damage bill will total more than $80,000. The building was insured.
The show has attracted 240 dolls, all intricately crafted and displayed. Judging is not an easy task, taking up to 10 minutes to painstakingly examine costume, workmanship, painting and overall appearance. Although some of these dolls have come out of the same mould, all are different.
Yeah, each doll, 3 people can make the same doll and they all look different. They've just got their own character that's brought out by the individual that makes it.
Dianne Whittle is a professional maker, and over the years she has seen a change away from the traditional antique doll.
I love the antique reproduction, but the modern dolls are getting extremely popular. A lot of more doll artists are making their own moulds and they're becoming very popular. They're a little bit easier to paint and you've got such a wide variety.
The dolls will go on display this Saturday at Broadmeadow Binnyshell, with proceeds going to the Smith family. Meanwhile, in Civic Park, Matara celebrations continued with a children's concert. The glorious weather attracted scores of families, all eager to take in the entertainment. As well as the Johnny Young Talent School, there were the usual attractions such as the Dodgem Cars, the Giant Slide and the Ship of Fools comedy act. The Matara Festival ends on Sunday.
The subway at Newcastle Beach has become a canvas for artist Birgit Hansen. She's transformed the thoroughfare into a time tunnel, depicting beach scenes from the turn of the century to the 1990s. But she didn't do it all single-handedly. After a group of graffiti artists sabotaged her work, she recruited them, and their artwork has become a part of the mural. It's all part of the Newcastle City Art Program, designed to highlight the unique cultural identity of Newcastle. The tunnel is the first of a number of projects planned for the city. The Hunter Area Health Service has come to the party and invited Miss Hansen and her young collaborators to revamp the hoardings around the Royal Newcastle Hospital. The business sector and the public have been invited to be a part of the brightening of the city by submitting their ideas for similar projects.
The $90,000 renovations to Lake Macquarie's Coastal Patrol headquarters were paid for through public donations, drawn mainly from a grateful boating community. The opening of the two-storey command post coincides with the Coastal Patrol's celebrations of their 40th year serving the Lake Macquarie area. With the new facilities, the Royal Volunteer Coastal Patrol will be able to monitor radio traffic 24 hours a day over weekends and public holidays, as well as maintaining a weekday service up to 5 p.m. The headquarters will also play an instructional role, hosting safety lectures on first aid and boat handling. And the building will also make the lot of the volunteers more comfortable with sleeping, bathroom and kitchen facilities.
Police say the family sedan was parked on the side of the freeway when it was hit from behind by a semi-trailer. The Toyota was pushed down the road about 90 metres, bursting into flames as it and the semi-trailer ploughed through the Armco guardrail, over an embankment and into the scrub. A fleet of ambulances, emergency vehicles and fire engines rushed to the scene. Police say the infant suffered serious burns. The semi-driver was taken to Wyong Hospital but later allowed to leave. Police are questioning the man in relation to the accident.
The local lads opened superbly and dominated the first half. With a willingness to attack at every opportunity, the break came 35 minutes into the half when Brad Evans latched onto a ball that wasn't cleared properly and he thumped it past the Canberra keeper to put Austral in front. 2 minutes later, Troy Halpin ran onto a delightful ball from Johnson, then controversy, as the referee awarded Austral a penalty for interference by the keeper. With the Croatia bench still protesting, Adam Leatherbarrow stepped up to give Austral a 2-0 lead at half-time. Whatever Ivan Grusic said to his players at the break worked because Canberra came out smoking. And it wasn't long before they had a chance to score when Urdu was brought down from behind by Moyle. Arvanitis coolly stepped up and Croatia were back in the match. 6 minutes later, the third penalty of the match, as the referee ruled Paul Blackall fouled Tony Valanis inside the box, and Arvanitis went to the spot. But his cracking left foot drive hit the post and Australs cleared. The equaliser came in the 20th minute when a high cross from a free kick was spilled by keeper Dunkley and Urdu swivelled and his shot came off Andy Roberts' head and it was 2-2. 5 minutes extra time each way was nail-biting stuff, with neither team able to crack the defence of the opposing team. But with 50 seconds left before a penalty shootout would decide the champion, Evans gave a delightful ball to Halpin, and if ever a player deserved a goal, Halpin did, and he brilliantly gave Australs the State League Youth Championship.
George Walker is writing a book on the history of the Presbyterian Church in the Hunter. For several years he's been trying to convince the church to search for the time capsule laid with the building's foundation stone in 1889. The church didn't want to damage the 100-year-old structure, but the earthquake left the way open for George to investigate. For the last few weeks, the bricks around the stone have been painstakingly removed, and this morning the capsule was uncovered. But George's excitement soon turned to disappointment. It turned out to be nothing more than a corked bottle. Over the years, water has destroyed the newspaper accounts of the day that were believed to be inside. All that remains is some dirty water and a couple of coins.
I'm disappointed that a simple thing like sealing wax couldn't have been put around to prevent water getting into the bottle. So to some extent it's a disappointment, but nevertheless it's at least solves one problem, that's what's behind the stone.
The find has also provided a lesson for the future. Behind a new stone, historians in the year 2090 will uncover a weatherproof stainless steel box with a history of the church recorded on microfiche.
While work continued at the Junction Public School today, the adjacent classrooms were deserted. Almost 3 weeks ago, teachers and parents agreed to wait until all demolition work was finished before allowing the students to return. That decision was vindicated in the worst possible way on Saturday. 24-year-old Philip Gascoigne died as a result of injuries he received when a wall collapsed on him. Unions say he was a victim of a dangerous and unregulated industry.
No demolisher needs a licence to pull down a building. You do need a licence to put a building up, but you don't need a licence to pull a building down.
Union officials inspected the site today and were unwilling to lay the blame on anyone at this stage.
It's seen as an unfortunate accident, but as more facts come out, we'd certainly be wanting to know that that is the complete area of it.
It's not yet known if the incident will be the subject of a coronial inquest. It could be up to 3 weeks before that decision is made, based on the results of police investigations and the wishes of the dead man's family. Bruce Mackenzie, NBN News.
The record attempt began in deceptively calm conditions off Sydney's Little Manly Beach, but soon after it became clear Mother Nature wasn't in a cooperative mood. The crew was buffeted by northerly winds gusting up to 30 kilometres an hour, and a 1.5 metre swell made life difficult for skier Paul Robertson. He fell further and further behind schedule, and Newcastle Harbour authorities were becoming worried.
You still can't sight him up here. Can you still see him?
I'll have a look through the glasses.
They finally arrived almost 2 hours late and abandoned plans for the return trip. The first leg had taken more than 3 hours, the time allotted for the entire run.
It was all right when we first started, but as further we got up, the wind started to come up and started to get bigger seas. Started about 1 metre at Sydney, and just out of Newcastle it's about 3 metres.
Robertson plans to make another record attempt within 6 weeks, and hairdressing mogul Stephen Ackery has pledged the services of his $1 million boat once again.
He's an amazing young man to do what he did, but the waves were sometimes higher than him.
Do you think you'll be back for another crack at it?
Of course you'll be back.
The young council worker led police to a tiny beach just north of the bogey hole where he'd found the fall victim at about 9:30 this morning. Ambulance officers soon determined that conditions were too treacherous to carry the patient out on a stretcher. They summoned instead the Westpac NBN rescue helicopter. The injured man believed he'd fallen from the 14-metre rock face at about midnight and had later crawled under a ledge to shelter from overnight rain. This morning he dragged himself back onto the beach where his calls for help were answered. The helicopter was airborne at about 10 o'clock, ferrying its patient to Royal Newcastle Hospital, less than 40 seconds flight from the scene. It's understood the man is being treated for leg, arm and head injuries. His condition is described as stable.
This patch of land near Singleton was once prime grazing country. Now it's little more than a gravel pit.
I think in the Hunter Valley we've tended to think it doesn't apply to us. People are aware of salting in irrigation areas down the Riverina and over in Western Australia, and yes, it's a problem and nasty. And certainly it's very bad in those sort of areas. So we've tended to think ourselves as lucky and not recognise problem areas here.
The origins of soil salinity date back millions of years when the Hunter was a marine environment.
The whole of the landscape has been laid down under the sea. So right throughout the rock material we have salts, and that's common salt from the seawater.
The water table below the soil surface has a high salt content. With extreme rainfall or irrigation, that table rises and kills the vegetation, leaving countryside vulnerable to erosion. Soil Conservation says the worst hit area is Muswellbrook through to Maitland. So what's the answer? Salt-tolerant trees such as red gums, river and swamp oaks help soak up the water table, giving other plant types breathing space to survive. For generations, local farmers have stripped paddocks bare of trees. Now the Hunter Valley Conservation Trust, working with Soil Conservation and Forestry, is pushing for farmers to redress the problem, protecting the soil's arteries from an overdose of salt. Peter Ryan, NBN News.
This is the way most people view public libraries, a place where you go to borrow books and look up reference material. But in the past 5 years, a quiet revolution has been overtaking the library system.
Libraries are becoming much more an information source that people can go to for information on any subject. They can tap into databases of information, both numeric and bibliographic, in Australia and overseas.
Technology is making that possible. Compact discs are being used to store complete databases. One disc contains the Australian census. Another stores all the information in every telephone book in Australia. But that access to information isn't limited by what a certain library has in its own records.
Now, one of the advantages of this sort of technology for libraries is that we can search on any word almost instantly, or a combination of words. We can network them and we can transfer the information around the world.
And photos are also being stored and catalogued using 25cm laser discs. This disc contains 50,000 pictures on each side with instant word recall and high-resolution printing. There is even technology to assist the disabled. This machine reads printed text in a variety of voices, a remarkable aid for the visually impaired. It's hoped that all of this technology will eventually be available in Hunter libraries. But with 85% of funding coming from local governments, libraries have to lobby hard for their money. The expo in the Newcastle Region Library is open to the public for 1 week from tomorrow. John Church, NBN News.